Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Former US President Joe Biden is diagnosed with high-grade prostate cancer that has spread to his bones, according to a statement from his office. The cancer is hormone sensitive and potentially manageable. Support is pouring in from Trump, Obama and Harris across the political spectrum. Israel says it will let in a basic amount of food to avoid starvation in Gaza after a 10-week blockade sparked global outcry. The move comes as Israel launches widespread ground strikes and vows to prevent Hamas from controlling aid distribution. President Trump will call Vladimir Putin today to push for peace in Ukraine as Russia launches its biggest drone attack since the war began. European leaders, backed by Keir Starmer, demanded immediate ceasefire to end the bloodiest conflict in Europe since World War II. Britain and the European Union reached tentative agreements on defence, fisheries and youth mobility, opening the door for UK firms to join EU defence contracts. The Common Understanding text now awaits approval from all 27 EU member states ahead of today's summit. Bucharest Mayor Nikos Ordan defeats Trump ally George Simeon in a shock runoff win, vowing to keep Romania firmly backing Ukraine. The election follows a cancelled first round and claims of Russian meddling, with Dan securing 54% of the vote. Russia fires 273 drones at Ukraine in its largest attack since the war began, killing one woman and destroying homes ahead of new ceasefire talks. Trump plans Monday calls with Putin and Zelensky as Kiev claims Moscow may launch a ballistic missile to pressure the West. Iran's foreign minister says uranium enrichment will continue with or without a deal as talks over its nuclear program remain deadlocked. He adds Tehran is ready for serious talks if the US wants to guarantee Iran never develops nuclear weapons. Opposition leader Tundu Lissu appears in person for his treason hearing, facing a possible death penalty if convicted. "We will be fine, don't worry at all," he tells supporters in court, according to some reports. Our top story today, former US President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones, his office has confirmed. He was diagnosed on the 16th of May after experiencing urinary symptoms. Biden is now exploring treatment options. While the cancer is considered stage 4, doctors say it is hormone sensitive and can be managed. His Gleason score is 9 out of 10, indicating a very high risk form. Experts note that while bone-spread prostate cancer is incurable, many patients live for years with advanced treatments. Biden, who ended his re-election bid last July amid health concerns, has faced criticism over his age and fitness. Leaders have expressed their sympathy. President Trump said he was saddened by the news and offered public sympathy to Biden and his family. Former Vice President Kamala Harris called Biden a fighter, and she praised his strength and optimism in facing this new health challenge. While former President Barack Obama also expressed that Joe Biden will face cancer with resolve and grace. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says he is deeply concerned over President Biden's health, wishing him a speedy and full recovery. Americans are reacting with sadness to the news of Biden's diagnosis. Residents who have lost their loved ones to the deadly disease are expressing heartfelt sympathy for the Biden family. Let's take a listen in to some of the reactions.
Although he is in his early 80s, cancer is a beast, and I speak from nearly firsthand experience. Cancer took my husband the day after he turned 54. So cancer is an enemy that we can face no matter what time. So I'm sad that he and his family have to go through this battle.
It's very heartbreaking. I mean, it's not like a personal friend or anything like that, but I mean, it's sad. My mom died from cancer, so I know, and my grandmother, so I like literally watched them, you know, kind of go down, and I think that's just really sad. His last years, his life's gonna be really hard.
I mean, just finding out, I feel bad for him, of course. Personally, he didn't align with my political beliefs, but I don't believe that would define the value of his life. So I'm sorry, I feel bad for him and his wife and his kids, of course.
We now have some breaking news coming in where, according to reports, the Kremlin has described today's phone call between President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump as important following fresh diplomatic talks on Ukraine held in Istanbul. According to Russian state media, Moscow reiterated that a diplomatic settlement to the Ukraine conflict remains preferable, even as hostilities continue on the ground. We move over to Africa for our next story, where a deadly suicide blast rocked Somalia's capital, killing several young recruits outside the Cerro de Mario army camp. The attacker, disguised as a civilian, detonated explosives amidst a crowd of aspiring soldiers, causing mass casualties and widespread destruction. Witnesses described the scenes of carnage, with bodies strewn across the street as panic gripped the area. Terrorist group Al-Shabaab, affiliated with Al-Qaeda, has claimed responsibility, marking an escalation in its recent campaign of violence. This attack follows a failed bombing on the presidential convoy in March and mortar strikes near the airport last month. Security forces have launched an investigation and tightened surveillance. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates has strongly condemned the attack, calling it a criminal act and reaffirming its stance against all forms of terrorism. Listen in to one of the eyewitnesses.
قرحان دقناي انت قرحه كدحay ciyaal maskiina oo soo baxay oo wala xaal qoraa loo sheegay waxay tahay moogi waa dhamaadeen dadkii jaa waxa lagu dhameynaa qarax iyo balaayo ilaahay umada nasriha u keeno bilaa dhimashada 15 xamal soo u qeeysa laakiin dhaawaca tirada ka batay.
We're now joined by Dr. Levi Nadu, who's at the Tushwayne University of Technology, located in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Nadu. I first of all wanted to ask you about the group which has taken responsibility for this terrorist attack, Al-Shabaab. What can you tell me about them, as actions by this group are little known in mainstream media?
Good, greetings to you, of the greatest at home. These are the groups that have always been a fighting government, and of course for simple reasons, the reasons of wanting to have access or to control government. Their fight against government has been going on for over 2 decades. What has characterized their fight against the government has loss of life, and one that therefore target state institutions. They will target the armies. They will target other institutions of the state, and in the main, they will target institutions that are mostly utilized by ordinary citizens. And the most painful part of this exercise is that even though there has been a number of attempts to have discussions going on in order for the differences to be addressed, the unfortunate part is that there is a continuous fight and attacks on civilians and other government officials. What becomes even more sophisticated is that apart from the use of the ordinary equipments of the war, or directing or being directly able to identify them, some of them would be actively involved in the Al-Shabaab, which actually disguise them to ordinary citizens. This is where the attacks on civilians will therefore take place. And of course, it therefore appears to be a war or a conflict that is difficult to deal with, because they are actually continuing with these attacks and we do not know when they're actually going to come to an end.
Dr. Nadu, thank you very much for joining us. We now stay in the African continent, where the Sudanese army has recaptured the strategic At-Run area in North Darfur from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, marking a significant shift in the 3-year civil war. The joint forces claimed the RSF suffered heavy losses in the battle. At-Run is critical due to its location near border routes connecting Sudan to Libya, Egypt and Chad. But the conflict continues to devastate civilian lives. At least 14 people were killed when RSF artillery struck the Abu Shouk displacement camp in Darfur, targeting markets and mosques. The RSF has also intensified attacks on Al-Fashir and recently seized Zamzam camp, forcing 400,000 from their homes. As the war splits Sudan, RSF controls much of Darfur and the south, while the army holds the north and east. In Khartoum, RSF drone strikes have caused a statewide blackout, worsening a health crisis amid a collapsing medical system, with most hospitals closed and aid groups warning of catastrophe. We now turn to the Middle East, where Israel has launched one of its most intense military barrages in weeks, striking over 30 targets in southern Gaza's Khan Yunis within an hour. At least 28 Palestinians have been killed since dawn, including women and children, as civilian areas come under relentless fire, according to some reports. Israel says its campaign, codenamed Operation Gideon's Chariots, aims to secure the release of hostages still being held by Hamas. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says the operation is being conducted with great force as ground troops advance in key neighborhoods. Let's listen in to what the military spokesman regarding the same.
צה"ל בהובלת פיקוד הדרום פתח במבצע מרכבות גדעון בהתאם להנחיית הדרג המדיני. אנחנו יוצאים למבצע כדי לממש את כל מטרות המלחמה בעזה. השבת החטופים ומיטוט שלטון החמאס. חשוב להדגיש, אנחנו נדע להתאים את עצמנו לכל התפתחות. במהלך המבצע נגביר ונרחיב את השליטה המבצעית ברצועת עזה, תוך ביטור הרצועה והנעת האוכלוסייה לשם הגנתה, בכל המקומות בהם נפעל. כפי שאמרתי בעבר, אנחנו מתקדמים על פי תוכנית סדורה והדרגתית.
Meanwhile, after weeks of global pressure, Israel has partially lifted its blockade, allowing limited humanitarian aid into Gaza for the first time since early March. France has led calls for unrestricted aid access as indirect ceasefire talks continue in the background. We now move over to Europe, where the UK is set for a major reset in EU relations, the most significant shift since Brexit, as Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosts EU leaders in London. The agreement focuses on boosting trade and defence cooperation, including a landmark pact that could give UK firms access to a €150 billion European rearmament programme. Talks, which went through the night, also cover easing food export, red tape, a 12-year fishing deal and faster e-gate access for travellers and a limited youth mobility scheme. Starmer, who backed Remain, says it's time to move on from old political fights. While he rules out rejoining the single market, he's pushing for practical benefits despite criticism from Brexit hardliners like Nigel Farage, who leads in opinion polls in the UK. The reset comes amid a shifting global order fueled by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and growing geopolitical uncertainty. EU ambassadors are meeting in Brussels to finalise the deal as Britain redefines its post-Brexit future. We move on once again. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with his Danish counterpart Lars Løkke Rasmussen in Beijing today. The meeting marked the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries and aimed to deepen cooperation, trade, green development and diplomacy. The meeting also touched on China-EU relations ahead of Denmark's upcoming EU Council presidency. China's foreign minister stated that China fully respects Denmark's sovereignty and territorial integrity on the Greenland issue, Wang also expressed hope that Denmark will continue to support what he called China's legitimate position on matters concerning its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Both sides acknowledged a widespread consensus on safeguarding multilateralism and defending free trade. In his meeting with Danish counterpart, Wang also said that China is willing to strengthen dialogue and cooperation with the European Union. We stay in the Indo-Pacific, where Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense has reported a significant rise in military activity near its territory, detecting 21 sorties of People's Liberation Army, 8 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels, and 3 official ships. Of these, 16 PLA aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait median line, entering Taiwan's northern, southwestern, and eastern air defense identification zones. This follows a similar pattern from Sunday, when 16 PLA aircraft and several plan vessels were also detected in the area. In response, Taiwan has been closely monitoring Chinese activity in the region. Taiwan's military is advancing its defense capabilities, having completed initial evaluations of its 6-month generation Tianqiang missiles. Set to be produced next year, these missiles offer enhanced air defense with a maximum interception altitude of 70 kilometers, surpassing previous systems like the Tianqiang-3 and the PAC-3. This development significantly strengthens Taiwan's ability to intercept high-altitude ballistic and cruise missiles. Meanwhile, the deputy head of Taiwan's Coast Guard Administration, Hyesang Ching-chen, says that Taiwan is not ruling out political warfare from China. We move back to Europe once again, where the new Pope Leo XIV held a closed-door meeting at the Vatican with US Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to the Holy See, the discussion touched on religious freedom, bilateral ties and global issues, including ongoing conflicts affecting the world today. The visit comes just days after Pope Leo's inaugural Mass and his public call for an end to Russia's war in Ukraine. After their Vatican talks, Vance and Rubio also met with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Rome, as the administration continues its engagement on European security and religious dialogue. In a controversial claim, Telegram founder Pavel Durov says he was approached by the head of French intelligence, Nicolas Lerner, with a request to ban conservative Romanian voices on Telegram ahead of the country's elections. Durov says the meeting took place at the luxurious hotel in Paris. Durov refused, stating that Telegram has never censored protesters in Russia, Belarus or Iran and won't start in Europe. The French Foreign Ministry has strongly denied the allegations, calling them baseless and urging respect for Romania's democratic process. The claim comes just as centrist Mayor Nucin Dordan scored a stunning presidential victory over a hard-right, Trump-inspired nationalist candidate. And we stay in Eastern Europe. Poland's presidential election is headed off to a runoff after a tight first round, with Liberal incumbent Rafał Trzaskowski and of the Civic Coalition leading with 31.2%, just ahead of nationalist Karol Nawrocki of Law and Justice on 29.7%, according to exit polls. Despite pre-election polls predicting a larger lead, Trzaskowski now faces a narrow path to victory on June the 1st. Let's listen in to what the Liberal candidate in the presidential election, Rafał Trzaskowski, had to say.
Mówiłem wam 8 miesięcy temu, że będzie bardzo, bardzo blisko. I jest bardzo blisko. Bardzo się cieszę z tego, że wygrałem pierwszą turę, ale dużo pracy przed nami. Potrzebna jest pełna determinacja. Potrzebne są wasze głosy. Potrzebne jest przekonywanie wszystkich. Podziały. Idę po zwycięstwo właśnie dla tych wszystkich, którzy byli przez PiS atakowani. Dla kobiet. Idę po zwycięstwo dla lekarzy i lekarek. Idę po zwycięstwo dla nauczycieli i nauczycielek, bo oni wszyscy byli przez PiS atakowani. Idę po zwycięstwo dla seniorów i seniorek. Idę dla młodego pokolenia, którym tamta władza nie miała nic absolutnie do zaproponowania.
Far-right candidates secured over 21%, including controversial politician Grzegorz Braun. The runoff will shape Poland's future. Trzaskowski supports EU integration and rolling back PIS's judicial reforms, while Nawrocki opposes liberal policies and promises to prevent a single-party dominance. The outcome could either empower Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government or maintain the current political deadlock. Turnout stood at 66.8%, while Nawrocki denies scandalous claims over a property dispute. He has received support from US President Donald Trump. A final exit poll, including partial results, is expected later tonight. Nicușor Dan, the centrist mayor of Bucharest, won a tense rerun of Romania's presidential election on Sunday, beating nationalist George Simion. The ballot came 5 months after Romania's constitutional court annulled an election over allegations of Russian interference and a massive social media promotion of the far-right frontrunner, who was not allowed to stand again. Dan, who campaigned for an honest Romania, gained close to 54% of the vote, while US President Donald Trump admirer Simion secured 46%, according to near-complete results. Here's what Dan said to his supporters.
Despre politicieni, alegerile sunt despre comunități și în alegerile de azi a câștigat o comunitate de români care vreau o schimbare profundă a României. În momentul ăsta, un moment de speranță. Vă rog însă să aveți răbdare pentru perioada care vine. O să urmeze o perioadă dificilă, necesară pentru a echilibra economic această economie, pentru a pune bazele unei societăți sănătoase. Vă rog speranță și răbdare.
Turnout was close to 65% compared to 53% for the May the 4th first round, which Simion had secured the most votes. Simion thanked his supporters for voting for him and told them that the fight for justice, truth and freedom must continue. Here's what he said.
Aș vrea să-l felicit pe contracandidatul meu, Nicușor Dan. A câștigat alegerile, a fost voința poporului român. Vreau să mulțumesc celor peste 5 milioane de români care și-au pus încrederea în mine. Nu îi voi dezamăgi, nu există un lucru mai de preț pentru mine decât încrederea lor. Am fost singuri împotriva unui întreg sistem, singuri împotriva tuturor. Sunt mândru de voi și sper că v-am reprezentat cu cinste. Este timpul să continuăm lupta noastră pentru dreptate, pentru adevăr, pentru familia naturală, pentru credința creștină și pentru libertate. Vom fi în continuare o parte importantă și semnificativă a societății românești. Vă rog pe fiecare dintre voi să nu abandonăm. Mergem până la capăt, chiar dacă este greu să simțim acest gust amar al înfrângerii. România și poporul român trebuie să fie pe primul loc.
The vote was seen as crucial for the direction of the EU and NATO member bordering war-torn Ukraine. In an interview hours after he claimed electoral victory, Dan said his country will continue to support neighbouring Ukraine in its war with Russia. Moving on now, tens of thousands of protesters packed Budapest's Kossuth Square on Sunday, voicing fierce opposition to a proposed law that would allow the Hungarian government to sanction NGOs and media outlets deemed to be a threat to the country's sovereignty. The bill, pushed by Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, has been widely criticised as a move towards authoritarianism. Demonstrators waved Hungarian, EU and Pride flags, chanting, "We've had enough," while rights groups, including Amnesty International, described the measure as a clear attempt to silence dissent. Under the proposal, organisations labelled as foreign influenced could be blacklisted, blocked from funding and barred from public support. Orban denied the authoritarian allegations, claiming the goal is to protect Hungary from foreign propaganda. But critics warn it's an attack on democracy that could further erode civil liberties in the country. Let's take a listen to some of the protesters.
Így a 70-es, 60-as években, amikről még a törikönyvekben is úgy tanulunk, hogy bárhol meg se történt volna, és ez az érzés.
Már elég régóta táncolt ezen a határon, ma már teljesen átlépte ezt a határt. Ez egy valódi diktatúra kísérlete, remélhetőleg sikertelen.
Mit kapunk valódi képviselet, építő kormányzás helyett? Háborús fenyegetést, gyűlöletet, kirekesztést, kényszert és hazugságot.
We turn now to the Indo-Pacific. South Korea's presidential candidates clashed in a heated TV debate on Sunday ahead of the snap election on June the 3rd, which will decide the successor to former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was impeached over his brief declaration of martial law last December. Lee Jae-myung, the opposition Democratic Party candidate and current frontrunner, faced criticism for his stance on China, with opponents accusing him of being too accommodating to Beijing. Lee argued for more balanced foreign policy, saying South Korea should not fully align itself with Washington and emphasized the importance of managing relations with China and Russia while maintaining security cooperation with the US and Japan. Lee also outlined his domestic agenda, advocating for more investment in AI, a 4.5-day work week, protection for unionized workers and a focus on South Korea's interests in trade negotiations, especially with the United States. On AI, Lee proposed developing sovereign AI to make tools like ChatGPT freely available to South Koreans. He has also vowed to raise AI investment to 100 trillion won and offer a production tax credit of up to 10% for domestically manufactured and sold semiconductors. Meanwhile, Kim Moon-soo, the Conservative People Power Party candidate, promised to create jobs and foster business growth through deregulation. Kim has pledged to create a government agency dedicated to innovating regulations and invest more than 5% of the national budget in research and development. Moving on once again, the NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, has announced plans for Taiwan's first AI supercomputer as he showcased the company's latest advancements in artificial intelligence. Huang said NVIDIA would work with Taiwanese tech giants Foxconn and TSMC, as well as the government, to build Taiwan's first AI supercomputer. NVIDIA has also launched a new version of its NVLink tech called NVLink Fusion that will sell to other chip designers to help build powerful custom AI systems with multiple chips linked together. Marvel Technology and MediaTek plan to adopt this new tech for their custom chip efforts. Here's what the NVIDIA CEO had to say.
Well, Taiwan doesn't just build supercomputers for the world. Today, I'm very happy to announce that we're also building AI for Taiwan. And so today we're announcing that Foxconn, Taiwan, the Taiwanese government, NVIDIA, TSMC, we're going to build the first giant AI supercomputer here for the AI infrastructure and the AI ecosystem of Taiwan.
This comes as global semiconductor chip giants have gathered in Taiwan for the island's top tech expo. Computex, as the direct subsector grapples with the impact of US tariffs and disrupted supply chains. Top executives from Qualcomm, MediaTek and Foxconn will also speak at Computex, where advances in moving AI from data centers into laptops, robots and cars will be in the spotlight. The 4-day event will draw computer and chip companies from around the world to Taiwan, whose semiconductor industry is critical to the production of everything from iPhones to servers that run ChatGPT. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.